You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Welcome to The Matrix on 103.5 The Light, WMUZ Detroit. And now, here's your host, Chris Stevenson.
Well, good morning and welcome to The Matrix. And first of all, before we do anything else, I have to say a great big thank you to our general manager, Frank Franciosi, because we took an hour of airtime. And typically what happens on a Saturday morning between 8 and 9 is the computer loads up some songs and plays some great contemporary Christian music, and the Inside Outside guys come on at 9 o'clock. So instead of that, Frank allowed us to take an hour of airtime to talk about some things that are really going on in the world that you're not going to hear on the 6 o'clock news. So thanks to Frank for allowing us to do this. And this is a pilot. It's a test. We don't know if the show's going to be back next week. We would have to get sponsors and pay for the airtime. But it's a great opportunity to talk about some subjects that maybe you haven't had a chance to talk about before. So I want to start with a clip from The Morning Light. And, my name's Chris Stevenson. I host The Morning Light 6 to 10 a.m. right here on 103.5 The Light, Monday through Friday. So thanks for joining us for the morning show, if you do. But I want to start with a clip from a couple of weeks ago. I got a Facebook post from a listener, and this Facebook post is what started the whole thing. So, Scott, go ahead and roll that. Okay, so here's a brand new Facebook post from Denise Morris in Trenton. It says, "Hi, Chris. I listen to you in the mornings on my way to Henry Ford Community College, and I'm always encouraged by your program, other listeners, and your insight. I love to hear Mandisa. She just gets you jumping. There's always something that lifts my spirits and sets me on the right path for the day. I catch Robin in the afternoon and just love her too. As for news and politics, there's Bob, who does say a lot of thought-provoking things. America in general better wake up. Our rights are being taken away, and it's time we take back our country. We all need to pray for God to bless our nation and in return restore order and serve Him. We need to pray for our military men and women to be blessed and protected and given the pay, respect, and honor they so very much deserve. We as Americans have forgotten if it were not for our veterans, we would not enjoy the freedom we have today. Freedom is something that should not be taken lightly but treasured and defended." And Denise, I am with you 100%, but I don't think that people want to hear what I have to say on this subject because I will not have a debate based upon the mainstream media. Take the Boston incident, for example. During the intensity and the fear and the live broadcast, they kept saying over and over and over, lockdown, lockdown, the people are on lockdown, you're on lockdown. Where have you heard that word before? In a prison, in a jail? I'll tell you what that is. That is the American people being conditioned to accept a police state. We are being trained, being conditioned to become prisoners in our own homes. I'm not going to have a debate based on the mainstream media. This politician said this, and then that politician said something else. Back and forth, over and over. Listen, it's confusion, it's distraction, it's a red herring. My Lord is not the author of confusion. Maybe one day I'll do a talk show and talk about what's really going on, but I will never have a debate based on the mainstream media. And some people, they're like, "Chris, I'm surprised at you. Why are you saying such things? If you keep up, I'm just going to turn the station to something else because it's, light and happy, warm and fuzzy, morning light, music, pay it forward Detroit. We pray for people and, read emails and that kind of thing." So that's fine. We'll keep doing that. And honestly, I think a lot of people, they don't want to know. They don't want to really see what's going on. And you can quote Romans 13 all you want to. All right, I'm not buying it. There's stuff that's happening that you are not being told, at least not in the mainstream. But maybe one day I'll do a talk show and we'll talk about what's really going on. But in the meantime, Denise, love to have you, my sister. Glad you're there on The Morning Light. All right, Denise, thank you very much. So that's how this whole thing started. Maybe one day I'll do a talk show, and that day is today. So let's introduce our panel. We decided to do this as a round table, kind of like the 12 disciples. So Jesus chose the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and we're just a ragtag bunch, and we're going to do the best we can to get through this hour. So let's start with James Pirowich. Hi, James. How are you?
Morning, Chris.
So tell us your background. Have you been hospitalized for mental illness? You taking psychotropic medication? Are you of sound mind, James?
I think so. 4 years ago, I suffered a heart attack and survived it. And I started to question why I survived that heart attack and picked up my Bible that I hadn't read from front to back as a kid and started reading it and have been following the Word on a regular basis now, and it has opened my eyes to so many different things that are around me that just don't seem right, seem askew of what I was living in up until that point of a world that everything was going great, work was fine, health seemed fine, family growing, children growing, and didn't really look at the things around me too much. Took most of it for granted, I guess, and that's really what led me to start to question the things that are happening around us and to look deeper.
So it sounds like what you're saying, James, is that you had this heart attack and it shifted your life perspective and you started to see things in a different way. You were drawn closer to the Lord and you started to see, your eyes were opened, you had a revelation as to what's going on in the world, and it deeply concerned you. Is that accurate?
Exactly, and so profoundly that it was really, I guess, a lot of survivors of tragedies, plane crashes, asked themselves these same questions as I started to look into it. And I've, of course, heard that kind of, a therapist, you need to talk to someone. But it became my therapy was reading the Word and reinventing all of the things I heard as a child growing up in the church, going to Catholic school till I was in 8th grade, and 1 hour of church before school, and hearing those stories. But now that core belief turned into a whole new quest for the truth.
Well, I have to be honest with
word,
you. One of the reasons that I got saved in the first place is that, I've always believed in God and Jesus and the Bible. I went to church with Grandma on Sunday morning like a lot of us have. But when someone started telling me about this new world order, about the prophecies of the Bible, the one world government that's prophesied in the book of Daniel, what Jesus said to the disciples in Matthew 24, what shall be the sign of thy coming in the end of the age? And he goes through the whole litany of things that are going to happen, wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes in diverse places. And if you look at the book of Revelation in chapter 13, where it talks about the mark of the beast, I started reading newspaper headlines and saying, this is happening right now, not somewhere down the road. And here's the thing, James. This is, 10, 15 years ago, we would be labeled as conspiracy theorists, people who wear tinfoil hats, and people would ridicule and mock me and say, well, what do you want us to do about it, Chris? Should we, get up on the roof with our tinfoil helmets and, shoot with our deer rifles at the black helicopters? No, all I'm saying is that be aware, open your eyes to the fact that we are living in the Matrix. And what does that mean? Just like you heard in the opening clip from the movie. Reality that we see in everyday life is one thing, but there are many things happening behind the scenes that a lot of people are completely unaware of, and that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, thank you, James. Let's talk about John and Pauline Holton. Guys, thanks for coming in today.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're glad to be here.
Excellent. And we have never met. I really appreciate you coming into the radio station. So, John, just give us a thumbnail sketch of what your background is and how you got involved in this.
Well, I was joined the Marine Corps in 1968 and served in 1970. I went to Vietnam for those 3 years and married my beautiful wife, Pauline. And through this here, we struggled, just normal life crises, one after another. But when her mother died a tragic death in a nursing home, and we found out that the government would not protect the elderly in a week, and they just would not enforce the laws of the state of Michigan to that effect, I had an epiphany that someone's got to step forward and hold these people accountable one way or another to protect the elderly, the infirm, the uneducated. They must have a voice because our government's not doing that. And this is how we came into all these issues and started our website, w4ar.com.
Okay, and let's say that a little bit slower for folks who didn't hear it, w4ar.com. And what does that stand for? Warriors
for American Revolution. The whole idea is that, as Mike Cox told me, he doesn't have to, that's our Attorney General in the state of Michigan, the previous one, is that they don't necessarily have to enforce the laws of the state of Michigan, and you have to deal with that on a personal basis. And our President Attorney General's office says the same thing. And so that's why we started the website and a movement to hold them accountable, to get the voices out there that you must take charge of your personal life and at every aspect and understand the laws, the Constitution, and how they will go ahead and run your life for you, take over your life if you don't step up and defend the Constitution, your personal rights and responsibilities.
Well, it's interesting, and we're going to take a caller here in a minute, but if you look at a pamphlet that came out, this is the FBI, okay, our Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is out of the Phoenix field office, and you can print this online. And I think one of the things that people need to learn how to do is how to properly use the search engines, because they say, well, Chris, what's your source of information? What's your documentation? Where are you getting all of these stories? And they want one simple answer to say, it's www. Here's the website that Chris said to go to.com. He said, well, I looked at that and I didn't see any compelling evidence, so I guess, Chris is just crazy and I'm going to go back to what I was doing before. But here's the problem, is that when you listen to the mainstream talk shows, the hosts will have you stick to one bullet point, one talking point, and that's it. And if you stray away even a little bit, they hit the dump button, you're off the air, you're out of the conversation. You're not sticking to the topic, Chris, so we're going to let you go. But here's what we want to look at today, is that there are many, here's the key word, compartmentalization. You have to know that there are many things that have to be connected. There's the militarization of America. There's the technology aspect. There are things like Codex Alimentarius and Monsanto, how they are trying to reduce the population by controlling the food supply. But let's take a phone call right now, 313-838-1035. Don is in Oxford. Don, you want to talk about the government? Go ahead. Don, are you there? Don, go ahead.
Yeah, Don's here.
Go ahead, Don.
Okay. We got to really wake up to what's really going on. My two buddies, they've been researching a lot of stuff. He's got a lot of documentation on it. Ken, he'd like to run for governor of Michigan. But in 1871, the United States became not the United States for America, it became the United States of America, and it's a corporation. People got to wake up to what it is. 1913 and that, they took our gold and silver away, and they were supposed to pay for everything for us. And that's your car, your house, everything. 1933, they brought in the birth certificate, and that birth certificate, if you look on your license, you look on your mortgages, you look on everything you're paying for, it's all capital letters, which made you a corporation for the corporation. That's why you pay taxes. That's why they can pull you over. Policemen don't have a license to be a policeman. In 1871, the lawyers formed down in Sarasota the Bar Association, which is a communist organization, and they don't have a license to be lawyers. And they formed their so-called courts, which is a gold flag around the flag, and it's a military court. You have no rights when you enter it. Now, my buddy's got all kinds of documentation on it. He's been doing it since 2004, and he'd like to run for governor, Ken, and change everything. But this is what's been going on in the United States. So when you go into court, you really shouldn't even, if they say your name, you shouldn't even say anything about it. You should not say anything, become mute, because that's where they get you when you start talking name, because it's not a civil court, it's a Roman court.
Hey, Don, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Don said a lot of good things, and he mentioned 1913, which is a very important year. So let's talk a little bit about the Federal Reserve. Now, it sounds very official. You think it's a part of the U.S. government, the federal government. But, James, you're familiar with this. The Federal Reserve Bank is a cartel of private bankers, and there's a show that's on WMUZ. What is his name? Tony DiMaggio?
Right, Tony.
Right, exactly. He talks about this all the time. We have a fiat currency in America, and the money is not worth the paper it's written on. It's not backed by gold or anything else. So talk about the Federal Reserve a little bit.
Well, how it all came to be was the powers at the time, Jekyll Island off the coast of New York, 1913, they came up with this plan to start the Federal Reserve, which is basically a printing house for the currency of the United States. As he said, took away our gold and our silver, and set up the IRS parallel to that as the collection agency for the Federal Reserve. So basically, the money to be put in circulation, printed by, and it's not a Federal Reserve government entity, this is a private company as well. It's actually the most scary private companies of all, and it's right on the white pages next to Federal Express, not in the blue pages in the Washington phone book, where all of the federal branches are listed. But it really seems to be how we became a part of this slavery plan 100 years ago, 1913. This was supposed to have a 100-year service date, which was, of course, now 2013. It was supposed to be up for review and or abolishment. But what's happened all through the course of the past 100 years is they've constantly revoted its charter. It's constantly been upgraded as a powerful entity that, as Greenspan himself said, we answer to no one.
And the bottom line is this, is that the Federal Reserve prints the money, okay, not the U.S. government, okay? We're actually paying them back with interest, and that's what a fiat currency is. So when people think that they're spending dollars, I mean, these Federal Reserve notes, they belong to a cartel of private bankers, and that's why we have a debt-based economy.
Correct.
Okay. So, and it's interesting because, John, you were talking about being a defender of the U.S. Constitution, and I'm looking at a pamphlet from the FBI field office in Phoenix, and this describes who terrorists are. Defenders of the U.S. Constitution, those who are against federal government and the United Nations, those who are called super patriots, hate groups. Christian identity is listed as one of the hate groups there. People who make numerous references to the U.S. Constitution, people who have strong views against abortion extremism. So I guess you and I are the terrorists, James.
They're branding us as an enemy, and the devil himself has really taken over this process for centuries. You have to have someone to hate. If someone is against your agenda, if someone is not going the path or sticking to the status quo, this person has to be demonized in some sort of a fashion. And literally, if you stand in someone's way, you must be made expelled. You have to have a badge that says you aren't to be trusted. You shouldn't be. You can't be. You don't listen to. We won't believe you. And that I think is really, it's so happening now with this grab for power and control. It really all goes in hand with this slavery. For 100 years we've been slaves. No matter what color our skin, our money and our processes of life has put us in this path of, if we don't pay a bill, it's off. If we don't follow the status quo, then we're an outcast. And that's where this demonization is coming from, really. I think it's spiritually a holy war of all holy wars.
And that's where I want to go next. I want to talk about this grab for power and how America is becoming a militarized police state. So let's take a break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. It's The Matrix on WMUZ.
You're in the Matrix with Chris Stevenson on 103.5 WMUZ. And now, here's Chris.
Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's against the powers of this dark world. I'm a soldier. Therefore, put on the full armor of God. So you can stand your ground. I'm a soldier
in the army of the Lord. Welcome back to The Matrix. I'm Chris Stevenson. Thanks for being there. This is our pilot show. So excited to have you. 313-838-1035 if you want to jump into the mix, into The Matrix. And I want to read a quote. And James Pierowich is here. Thank you, James. Appreciate you being here.
Oh, glad to be here.
And then we have John and Pauline Holton. Thank you so much for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
And we're going to talk about smart meters in just a minute. But I want to read a quote. This is David Rockefeller, founder of the Trilateral Commission. Everyone knows what that is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Anyone not know who David Rockefeller is? Okay, good. Raise your hand. I'll explain it.
Not in this neighborhood.
David Rockefeller, founder of the Trilateral Commission, in an address to a meeting of the Trilateral Commission in June of 1991. And this is what it says. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity during those years. But the work is now much more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practiced in past centuries. What do you think of that?
Well, the whole issue is that who's going to control our government and our way of life. And then we were talking about the Trilateral Commission. All the rich billionaires across the globe have their hands in our cookie jar. They want to control our life, take control of what we do, when we do it, and like going back to slavery of the old days.
All right, now listen to this quote. This is Dr. Henry Kissinger. We all know who Kissinger is, right? And because you talked about control. But the question is, how does one gain control? There has to be a methodology, because there's an overt style of dictatorship and then there's a hidden hand style of dictatorship. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But here's a quote from Dr. Henry Kissinger at a Bilderberg conference in Evian, France in 1991. It says, "Today, America would be outraged if United Nations troops entered Los Angeles to restore order." And at the time, he was talking about the riots in LA in 1991. "Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told that there were an outside threat from beyond, such as an extraterrestrial invasion, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all the peoples of the world would plead to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by the new world government." So let's talk about this concept of problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialectic. Right? It's thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So the whole idea is that you create a problem to get a reaction from the public, and they're crying out, this can never happen again. And then, of course, the powers that be come in with a solution that furthers their agenda in the first place. Does that sound vaguely familiar? Can you think of any scenario that would fit that description?
Well, the scenario, it's often called a false flag, but Boston itself was a great example of us submitting to this control. We fear for our lives. There are crazy people running around with bombs in their backpacks, and they're on the loose in our neighborhood. We need to lock our doors, let the powers that be do their job to find these individuals, bring them to justice, and stop the rampage so that we can go back to our safe, normal lives again. And under the guise of that freedom being assaulted, we were assaulted and conditioned to look at a nice big black bristling vehicle coming down our street, which really looks out of place if you've ever seen that on a city street somewhere.
And we're talking about the police armored vehicles.
Correct. Their new police SWAT armored vehicles, along with the police cars, and that
so the
is
point
very
is,
ominous.
They
look
very, very threatening.
Very threatening.
Very
Very
scary,
ominous, right.
without even saying anything.
Right. And that then going from neighborhood to neighborhood, door to door, knocking on doors, pulling people out of their homes.
Now, wait a minute. Hold on a second, James. How is that even possible? Aren't the American people protected by the Constitution? Can, police in black paramilitary uniforms just, knock on your door, and say, hands up, come out of your house at gunpoint? How is that possible?
They've since 9/11 written enough laws that give them all these freedoms to really circumvent the whole posse comitatus thing, where military is not to intermingle with police work.
All right, let's stop right there because people are saying, what are you talking about? In 1878, there was a law, posse comitatus, that said the American military would and should never, ever be used to police the civilian population. Am I correct in that?
Correct. Separation.
Okay,
never
now,
to be used.
That's what's happening right now, isn't it?
On a daily basis. I actually think those vehicles have those magnetic stickers that go on the door, from police SWAT for Boston, then to Homeland Security, then to FBI. I think they're probably pretty interchangeable for their job of being the threatening, protecting civil servants.
So would it be safe to say that the police force in America is being militarized?
Correct.
Would you say that's in violation of posse comitatus?
Well, more so than that is the assault of our intellect to see this happen and accept it. It's the police are not the ones that are really at your door in this situation in Boston. It was military operations 101, and ultimately to condition.
You don't mean
control.
Homeland Security, do you?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, let me read this article right here, and this is out of Forbes. You can look it up online. And John and Pauline, you can jump in anytime you want to. It says 1.6 billion rounds of ammo for Homeland Security. It's time for a national conversation. The Denver Post on February 15th ran an Associated Press article entitled "Homeland Security Aims to Buy 1.6 billion," that's billion with a B, billion rounds of hollow point ammunition. Now, let me stop right there. Hollow point ammunition, is that allowed in warfare? Is that okay?
No, it's illegal.
It's illegal.
It's illegal worldwide to be used, and not that it hadn't been circumvented by soldiers in the field over the past 100 years. I think this law has been in effect. But it is illegal to use in any theater of war. We buy it in this country and other countries for personal protection because it's a very damaging bullet. Hollow point ammunition is a doctor's woe when a victim from a shooting with hollow point rounds comes into his ER.
Right, because
they're generally not savable.
It opens up.
It opens up. It mushrooms into a much larger bullet. It is very, very devastating, and it is not within the parameters of warfare, where either you kill the offender, your enemy, with the round in your rifle or your weapon, or you wound him. And if he's wounded, he's allowed to be treated, taken back to a hospital, and given another chance to live.
Okay, so hollow points are deadly.
Hollow points are not
John,
good.
go ahead.
Yeah. What people have to realize is that we have the Second Amendment. We have the right to bear arms. But the arms are no good if you don't have any bullets to put in them to defend yourself. There's this conspiracy going on that there's going to be a revolution to go ahead and overthrow the government. So what's happening is the government is now making the ammunition unavailable. I believe that they're actually looking for possible riots to go ahead, upheaval of the people because of the Federal Reserve, what's going on, the mortgage crisis, the banking crisis. Not one of those people in the government has been held accountable for any of that. We had Watergate. That was the last time our federal government held any of these people in D.C. accountable for anything. And this is where it's coming from. We have banks being bailed out left and right, but people are losing their homes.
But no one's going to jail.
And no one's going to jail. The government is worried about the people actually uprising, having upheaval and riots in the streets, and they're preparing for that.
Okay, so let's tie all of this together because there are some people that are saying, what are you talking about? So at the same time that the government and Homeland Security is ramping up and they're buying these armored vehicles that people are seeing out on the streets, they're really made for battlefields. They're on the streets of America, and they're buying 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition. At the same time, every time you see an Aurora, a Sandy Hook, a Boston, a 9/11, the people are coming up and beating the drum saying, we have to get the guns. We've got to take away the guns. So is there any correlation there, or is that just a big coincidence?
This is exactly what's happening. This is the media. The government has become professionals, like you talked about the Trilateral Commission. Okay, they no longer have to make world wars to go ahead to dominate the world. What they're doing is inch by inch, they're taking initiative in different areas. You take the Sandy Hook. It's a tragedy that these people died, but it's no reason to eliminate the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, semi-automatic weapons, and deprive the people of ammunition. Because when you take an oath, when you join the service, as oath keepers are also one of those terrorist groups, but you forget that everyone who takes an office in the military is to protect and to defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. And then sometimes that could be our government agencies who are trying to infringe on our constitutional rights to protect our families, protect our homes, and our way of life, our religion, and everything else.
Okay, so let me go back one more time, come back around and say this. Here's the big scary question. Are all of these events, and James, you used the term false flag, are these organic events that just sort of randomly, spontaneously happened, or are they false flags with the purpose of pushing forward this agenda?
They all seem to have enough anomalies to them that people are starting to question these events as truthful, as completely staged, as partially staged. Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good tragedy
crisis go to waste.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to be ramped up so much. I mean, I've really watched an escalation of the pace here since January of 2013 of all these assaults on our intelligence, our freedom. The control aspect of it all is abominable. It's an amazing amount of effort being put forth by a whole myriad of government agencies to initiate fear and control using the buzzwords, the controlled media. Interesting, in 1985...
Wait a minute, you mean like the IRS targeting specific groups saying, if you speak out against the government, we're going to hurt you with the IRS? You mean like that?
Well, that specifically, it's so innocuous when you really look at it. It was just really a way to stop the competition for Obama's re-election campaign, to put all these Tea Party patriot applications on hold, not giving these people the time to focus on the work they were trying to do, but to focus on the forms that they were just totally hunkered down with a question: what is in the content of your prayers? Was one of the questions.
Excuse me?
What was the content?
What is the content of my prayers?
Now, when the head, this was just yesterday's testimony. This was very funny because this man who is the head of the IRS for this period of time was asked a question. Do you think that's an odd question to ask an applicant for a 401c, 501c tax exempt status, to ask what is the content of the prayers at your meetings?
Yeah, that's, if that's not control, I don't know what is.
And he couldn't answer it. He says, I don't really know. I guess in the context of it, we walked out of here and talked about it, it would not be the appropriate question. But
can we go back to the argument that the ACLU uses all the time, separation of church and state? Can we do that?
Well, I think they're only using one side of that coin. They're separating church from the state.
Well, of course.
Entirely. Because it has no place there, and it really doesn't. But the founders put that into the wording because it also means I have the freedom of my religion. I can preach, talk, be not taken aback for that, and have that free speech, and to practice that religion. And here's an IRS auditing question saying, what is the content of your prayers?
So the bottom line is it's about control, and we're going to talk about that coming up next from the technology point of view, and we're going to find out what these smart meters are all about next, coming up on The Matrix.
You're in The Matrix with Chris Stevenson on 103.5 WMUZ. Call Chris now, 313-838-1035.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
The Matrix on 103.5 WMUZ Detroit. And now, here's Chris.
Headlines read like a warning, we're under attack. One more step away. I just waved to a stranger, he didn't wave back.
Welcome back to The Matrix. I'm Chris Stevenson. Thanks for being there. 313-838-1035. Brandon Heath, The Leaving Eden. The headlines read like a warning, we're under attack. I just waved to a stranger. He didn't wave back. And I think that's because there is an atmosphere of fear and paranoia that's being fostered by the people who are supposed to be our benevolent leaders. I'm hearing about these snitch groups. If you see anything, make sure you call it in. Have you seen that lately, guys?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's everywhere.
They talk about it in the council meetings. We were at Sterling Heights, and they're talking about garage sales. They're talking about spying on your people in the garage sales. This is what's happening all over in different cities. Spy on your neighborhood. See what's going on. Tell the government what's going on.
You know, I've heard of this somewhere before. Help me with my memory. Where did this happen before in history?
Recently, history?
No, not recently. Was it Germany, Russia? What?
Yeah, Germany is where it started. And This is about the smart meter gig we were talking about earlier, about actually knowing what's going on in your home and ratting you on out, collecting the information and selling it, being able to control every part of your life.
And I'm saying it tongue-in-cheek because, my grandmother used to say, if I didn't, laugh, I would cry. And I think we have to not take ourselves too seriously. But let's go to the phones. This is Dyrese in East Point. Hi, good morning, Dyrese. How are you?
Hi, Chris. It's so good to hear that you guys are having this show. I'm so excited about it. Oh, my goodness. Now, I know you guys are touching on so many different things regarding the Matrix, but I have a question. Well, I really just want to talk about how is it that in the Matrix system that we have an understanding that we have power, but really we don't. I think it's just a way of making the people, convincing the people that we, the people, have a power that truly we don't, and that we have a right to vote on different political parties that truly we don't have that power to have to make a difference, true change. Now, that's where I believe for many, many years, but I'm starting to change my perspective on things regarding a lot of different aspects of where the government go. But in a matrix system, in my belief, in my opinion, I kind of want to hear you guys talk a little bit more about the matrix, is that it's a false sense of power, a false sense of control, where you don't really have, where they try to kind of divert you to think about political parties and aspects of it, but you don't really have power of any kind. It's just a governmental system that kind of make you feel like you are empowered by coming up with rights, but when it comes down to it, they get to choose and pick and choose how they want to run the system. Is there any way you guys can talk a little bit more about that? I would love to learn more about that.
Absolutely. Diarese, thanks for the call. That is an excellent point, because there's this two-party paradigm, and it's an illusion. Remember, we're talking about a hidden hand dictatorship. And this is exactly why I don't want The Matrix, I don't want this show to be just another show about the American political system, because we fall into this false paradigm. Well, the man with a little R by his name on the television with a little red flag said one thing, and then the man with the little D by his name and the little blue flag said exactly the opposite. Well, gee, I never saw that coming. And so it's this, again, the dialectical principle, dialoguing to a consensus. It's setting both ends against the middle. And if you notice, with every presidential election, no matter who gets into office, the same global agenda is going forward. The only agenda that's moving forward is the New World Order. Is that true or not?
Well, Chris, this is critical, because I wholly hard agree with you, but she's got the opposite. She's got the wrong perspective. The only thing that can save us,
go ahead, set her straight, John. Tell her
our
what's up.
Country, is that she starts participating more and more. She gets out her neighbors, her friends, her relatives, gets them out to vote, and goes to the city council meeting and asks that guy that she elected, the guy that took her money and her vote, why haven't you protected me lately?
Hold them accountable.
Why haven't you represented me lately, okay? How come my taxes, my schools, everything that you're doing is backward? How come we're not prospering? And how come our rights are depreciating?
And you know what, John? I think that's a really good point, because people look at the enormity of the global agenda and the elite, and they say, my God, I'm only one person. What am I supposed to do? What could I possibly do? They have all the money, they have all the guns, they have all the power. We can't do anything. But if you start at the grassroots level, if you get involved in the local government and you talk to the politicians who are working in your local community, that's where you can make a difference.
That's what we've done. We've gone to over 40 cities to talk to people about what's going on in their government, to get involved. More people need to get involved. I don't understand why people are so afraid. We're seniors and we're out there doing it. More people can get involved. Just go to your local government, in your local meetings, and see what's going on.
Right. Your own
Wake
township.
up to see
Right.
what's happening in your
cities.
own township.
Okay, so let's
out.
stop right there. And that's a great point, Pauline, because that's how you got involved with your website, which once again is what?
W4AR.com.
W4AR.com. And what does that stand for?
Warriors for American Revolution.
Warriors for American Revolution. Okay, and your passion is smart meters, because, again, the key word in all of this is control. It's about controlling the population. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about first of all, what is a smart meter? Because people are saying, what are they talking about? What's a smart meter?
Well, let's reference an analog meter. The analog meter is the one that's been on your home forever.
Okay, wait. Are we talking about electricity, gas? What is this?
Well,
all of those.
It's starting with the electric meter, and they're moving into the water meter and the gas meter, and eventually they're going to have smart chip appliances in your home. They're going to be able to communicate with this radio frequency controlled electric meter on the outside your home. And there's health consequences, costs, safety, liability, and the loss of your Fourth Amendment right to privacy.
Okay, so let's back up a step here. when you say the word smart, what we're really talking about is control. When you have a smartphone, there's going to be smart refrigerators that tell you when you're out of milk, because everything eventually is going to have an RFID chip, radio frequency identification. So again, it goes back to this concept of control, of invasion of privacy, and the government taking care of you, the nanny state. So how does the smart meter play into all of this?
Here we go. The analog meter on your home has been there, never bothered you, never affected you.
Okay, so people don't know what analog means. Analog means that it's not smart, it doesn't have a computer chip, it's just a dumb meter.
It meters your power for the money. They collect the money from the meter.
That was on your house.
It's simple, and you used to have to write the numbers down on a card.
What I have to do is reference this, because in the old meter, the mechanical electrical meter on your home with the little numbers, you got like 4 little dials on the outside, 1 through 0. And this was the analog electrical mechanical meter. You never knew it was there, except once a month some guy came on your property and read it, and then he went away. He came back a month later. Now they're putting on a digital radio frequency controlled meter that was going to be able to go ahead, broadcast signals into your home and collect information from inside your home, not just your electrical consumption, as the utility companies claim. This meter is running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's costing you more to operate it. There's new bill charges on your electric bill.
Okay, stop. So hold on a second, John. I want to understand this, and I want the listeners, more importantly, to understand this. So are you saying that the new utility meters that are installed on your home, the smart meters, are not just designed to meter and measure the electricity and the energy and the gas that you're using, but they're actually spy devices, that they're gathering information about the people inside the house? Is that correct?
Well, here we go with the New World Order, the Agenda 21 issue about collecting data and controlling the population. You referenced Germany earlier. If Hitler would have had a smart meter on the homes in Germany, he could have shut off the gas, water, and electric remotely from a town 50, 100 miles away with one button, and starved and froze the people to death.
Let me stop you right there, John, because it relates directly to the Mark of the Beast system. Because if you look at Revelation, this is straight out of your Bible, ladies and gentlemen, go read it. Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16, we all know this very well. It says, "He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name, 666. Now, a lot of people speculate about what the mark of the beast is or isn't. It's the Verichip. It's the microchip that's implanted in your hand or your forehead. It's shaped like a grain of rice. But going back to the point of the smart meters, this is all about, are you on the inside or are you on the outside looking in? So this is a way to say, if you speak out against the government, if you speak out against the New World Order, if you're not on board with the program, then you will not buy, you will not sell, you will not participate in the economy, you will not have access to all of the things that the world has to offer, and you're basically living in a Mad Max scenario. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're separating you. They're culling you from their group. They're going to isolate you. If you're not one of them, you're the bad guys. You're one of these conspiracy nuts. You're one of these outsiders.
Well, let me stop you right there, John, because the word conspiracy implies secret, but all of this is out in the open now.
Right.
Before, we were the tinfoil hat people, and now they're saying, well, of course there's a New World Order. Silly. Get with the program. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
It's how the devil loves to project himself, is right out in the open. No one will really question it. It's so good for you. Why would it?
Two key principles, James.
Accept it.
Two key principles. Order out of chaos, right? We cause these convulsions, these contractions, like Boston, Sandy Hook, 9/11. I mean, we could go through an entire list. And if you go back in history, there's the Reichstag in Germany. There's the USS Maine. We could go on and on and on with examples. But the point is that these convulsions create chaos, and the order comes out of the chaos. And then what's left are, if you're not for us, then you're against us, right?
They're going to control you.
We need to control you.
Yeah, you're going to isolate you, control you, and steer you away from their agenda, so that people will go ahead and will not have anything to do with you, because you are now an outcast. And this is how they win their battles. They blow up the episode out of proportion and become the savior to you.
We're going to protect you from the bad guys, because it's always pointing the finger over there. It's Osama bin Laden. It's whoever it is, the Russian terrorists. We're going to come in and save you from the bad guys.
Well, there has to be someone to hate. They always have to engineer a enemy, someone to be against, to allow the agenda to move forward, to allow warfare, to allow commerce.
Well, if the leaders
to meter
came on
how much electricity we will use, how much food we'll eat, how much ammunition is being made, how many weapons are being sold.
Which goes back to the whole concept of a hidden hand dictatorship, because if you came on television point blank and directly said, this is the way it's going to be, you're going to have a chip, you're going to have a smart meter, we're taking away your guns, and that's the way it's going to be. There'd be revolution in the streets tomorrow.
They're not doing that. People are afraid to get up there and speak. Like I was talking about the people going to their community. People are afraid to speak. People call us. People call us on the phone, and they're afraid of what's going on. I've got people from Detroit, Inkster, Romulus, all over the country saying, "Pauline, you got to get out there more." We are out there. We're out there 7 days a week doing this. People need to get out there and say,
everybody needs.
"Come on out there. Come on down. Get out there and rally and do what you can."
These words are strange to so many people. Smart meters.
Sure.
Agenda
meter,
21.
Agenda 21, everything's going on.
Okay, hold on a second, guys.
GMOs.
Let's go back to that for a minute, because people don't know what Agenda 21 is. But before we do, because we're running out of time, I want to pick up the phone. This is going to be Jamie in Wixom. Scott, you got that? Jamie in Wixom.
Morning. Actually, I'm enjoying the conversation today.
Excellent. Go ahead.
You guys were talking about smartphones and the smart appliances and chip appliances. To be honest, all you got to do is walk into a Lowe's and you'll already find them on the market shelves. These the washers where you can control it with your smartphone, the thermostats, all these little apps that you talked, that supposedly control your home style life. What are those apps doing?
Collecting information.
Exactly. And then what are they doing with that information?
Selling, making money.
Creating massive databases and psychological profiles, because we're telling them exactly who we are. Everything from what kind of toothpaste we like to our greatest, deepest fears.
Our social media is the biggest
and that's
tool.
Exactly it.
Biggest tool for that.
When you download those applications on your smartphone, I would be wary on it just to see what the permissions are.
Well, more you have to worry about is the radio frequency radiation being harmful to you. They're promoting all these here new appliances and technology, and they're not taking into account that this radio frequency radiation could be harmful to you, your kids, your family.
Oh, it's turning your home into a microwave.
Well, just think of how many people are going to get sick from all this stuff. People are so EMF sensitive. I talk to people all over the country about they can't hit being around with a washer, or dryer, or anything. Go in the malls. They can't. People are going to quit going places and doing things.
See, this is about the money, and it's about metering. It's about selling. When you close your refrigerator door, it will scan the shelf, and it will see you're out of milk. And your television and your smartphone will start to advertise. You'll get emails about heading to the market.
So let's back up a step.
This is selling for the dollar, which is our freedom. And we think for the convenience and the fact that, it's smart and it must be good for us. But it's really that it's each one of them is a little small step towards that control.
They're telling us what we can and can't do.
And
what we can and can't buy.
We're making money for them. We're paying them to enslave us, is what it really comes down to.
Well, back
money
to
for them.
Jamie, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Yippee slavery, Jamie.
All right,
set yourself free.
Now let's go back to this concept of culling the population, because does everyone know what the Georgia Guidestones are? These are down in Elbert County, Georgia, and it's kind of like the American Stonehenge. And if you read the inscriptions, and all of this, you can just go Google Georgia Guidestones, and you can see it. There's photographs of it. You can read it for yourself right on the inscription. The very first one says, to maintain humanity under 500 million people in perpetual balance with nature. All right, so there's 7 billion people on the planet? So James, John, Pauline, I guess we got to go.
Yes, we're all going. We all have to look out. Look over your back.
Who is going to be that counted into the 500
Who decides
million?
is what you want to know. Who decides? Who's going to make that decision?
Well, they're deciding for us because as a nanny state situation that's evolving with all of this control is that we're not necessary. We used to be the cash cows, and we still are to a certain extent, especially with this control, the smart meters, our smartphones. All of these things are still about commerce, but that touches on something that's totally different, where food, the population. Bill Gates said it clearly. Our resources on the planet are so extended. There's a volume of people on the planet so growing. And he said in his own seminar, walking back and forth on this gigantic stage, is that one of these numbers has to be reduced to zero. And he's not talking about the resources. He's talking about the population. And this is where this Agenda 21, where our food supply is being attacked with genetically modified organisms.
And by the way, you can look up Agenda 21 online. This is part of the UN, the Rio summit that they had in Brazil in 1992, where they actually describe human beings as resources to be managed, just like cattle or sheep or the grass on the ground. Did you see that?
Because they say so. That is this control again, and that population downsizing to convenience them.
All right, so we only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to tie this up with a bow. And some people would say, listen, Chris, it doesn't matter, because if you look at the Bible in Romans 13, it says that God has installed the authorities, and we are to obey the governing authorities. Everyone knows Romans 13, right? And then in the book of, I believe it's Philippians 4:8, where it talks about, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. Well, none of these things are really lovely or praiseworthy, but I feel like it's time for the American people to wake up, and we need to talk about these things and do exactly what you said, John, and exactly what you said, Pauline, and exactly what you said, James, that people need to get involved on a grassroots level and talk to their local politicians and start from the ground up and send the message that we know what's going on and we're not going to take it anymore. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, we must start participating.
Exactly.
The people have become so lax in trusting their government to do right by them, and they're not doing that anymore.
They're not looking out for our well-being, John. And it really boils down to that we have to take the time to really question this stuff. There is much information. Do not rely on the one quick Google answer to your query about any of these topics, because that is generally going to be the one that's on the top of the list from Google themselves to give you the feedback that they want you to read. They don't want you to go any further. Look at this. This must not be happening. It's not happening. So don't look at this picture. Look at this picture.
You must make an informed, educated decision on everything you do in your life.
Come on, John. Can't you just tell me who's on Dancing with the Stars tonight?
No, I'm not interested.
I don't have time for that.
We don't participate. We don't. You have to realize this is about survival of our country and our way of life and our religion. You must start. You must start your freedom. You must start participating. Everyone. You can't take it for granted that they're going to do right by you anymore.
And one individual can make a massive.
We must make our voices heard always, or they'll be taking everything. They're taking our rights away and everything.
Okay, one more time. What's your website?
W4AR.com.
James, John, Pauline, thank you so much for coming on The Matrix. Appreciate you. That's our debut pilot show. Email at chriss@wmuz.com. You can find us on Facebook. The number is 313-838-1035. You can call into the studio. Thanks so much. See you next time.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.